Hello, everyone, and welcome to Scott Schilling Speaks, another episode with me as your host, Scott Schilling. We're going to have a fun one today because I have a friend on board that has written an amazing book, Selling from the Heart, and he's a heart-centered sales guy. And for those of you who know me, I'm a heart-centered sales guy, so always fun. Larry Levine, thanks for joining me here today.
Oh, Scott, I've been looking forward to this. What the heck has been going on?
Oh, we're just talking to people and helping them through some things, right? So, um, tell me where your background is, or tell the audience where your background is, so they know a little bit more about you and where the book came from.
Yeah, I spent, now I'm going to date myself, Scott, but I spent almost 30 years, 28 and a half years in the Office Technology Channel. So, for those who don't know what the Office Technology Channel is, I sold copiers my whole entire life from 1987 until 2015 springtime. To me, that's a highly commoditized sales channel. It's chaotic, high sales turnover, lots of dysfunction, lots of broken promises, and so forth. But I made it work for one simple reason: is I flipped the script on everyone. I didn't turn this into rocket science, but I made it about the customer, not about the product and the services, me nor my company. And I parlayed that into a very successful career. But I learned a really good lesson along the way, and it was my very first year in sales. Is I started to watch what people were doing. When I say watch what people were doing, Scott, I started to watch people that were on my sales team, and I was cognizant, call it a sixth sense, of what they were saying, what they were not saying, how they were acting, how they weren't acting. And I learned that if I was going to survive in sales, I had to do the complete polar opposite of what they were doing. And it wasn't pushing things onto people, it was inviting them into conversations. And I had to learn this the hard way a little bit, but I learned it was all about the art of helping and the art of building relationships and bringing your heart and sincerity to the forefront, which at that time and still to this day is not synonymous with sales.
No, not at all. And that's always been my process as well. Coming out of the Ziegler camp, you can have everything in life you want when you help enough other people get what they want. I had read "See You at the Top," I think when I was still in high school, or at least heading to college. And that made such an impression on me that it just made total sense. So as a sales guy, quite frankly, I don't ever want to sell anything to anybody, but I always want them to buy a lot from me. Therefore, it's
It,
my responsibility to create that environment, right?
And I think I love what you say. I mean, I love that line that you always use, Scott. I mean, it's just so darn good. But it's so interesting. You referenced Zig. I remember one of my, I think it was the first or second uh, sales related book that I had read was How to Win Friends and Influence People
Yeah.
by good old Dale, right? Dale
Right. Dale
Carnegie. So that
Carnegie.
book's written in 1936. And I still think some of the classics, right? The Zig classics, the Dale classics, the Tom Hopkins classics are as relevant today as they've ever been. And I know that the whole core premise that I got from How to Win Friends and Influence People is about how to build relationships and change the way people think. We've been doing that forever and a day in sales. It's just now there's a lot more different ways of doing things. But it's
Yeah.
all about, hey, we were talking before we started recording this. I go, what, everyone makes things so complicated.
Yeah.
And they want to talk about, you don't necessarily have to have a relationship to buy something from somebody, which I do agree in maybe a low end B2B or B2C type transaction. But if you're in some kind of a situation, if you're in some sales vertical, if you're in a sales environment where it's a complex sale in nature, mid-size B2B and up, relationships do matter. And you have to do something about it. And you can't be forcing your wares onto somebody. You got to invite them in and you got to ask great questions in order for them to open up. And when you get to the heart of what matters, then they'll start opening up, Scott.
Absolutely. I was did a little training with somebody last week, and they said, basically, I loved how you presented it, and I'm pretty sure that you can't use these two words together, but I said, basically, you're an invitation welcomer. You invite them to take advantage of your products, goods, or service, however they do that. And it's interesting. I didn't have a stint in the office supply area, although I did interview
Uh-huh.
way back when for that. And it was so, um, bam, you do this. And it was like, well, that's why I probably never went to work in that area, because I said, yeah, that ain't me. That's never going to work. Right. So how did you get through that if the rest of the industry was more of the, um, I call it caveman style, bang them in the head, drag them back to the table to sign the deal? How did you have the courage, but also have the foresight to do it a different way?
Because I asked a lot of questions. And what I mean is I asked a lot of questions. I was very inquisitive. And I remember early on in my sales career, I would ask really simple questions. I mean, so simple that most people would have a hard time doing it because they're expecting this to be real convoluted. I would just ask my customers, what do you like? What do you don't like about salespeople? How do you want to be taken care of? Walk me through that. What's a great experience? What's a horrible experience? When's
Yeah,
the last time somebody wowed you? What's that look like? Help me understand that.
yeah.
And I just packaged this all up and just delivered what my customers had shared with me. Again, Scott, it was that simple, but yet it's so complicated because everyone's looking for something that's so radically different from the basics, if you get what I'm saying. I mean, and
Totally.
that's what I did in the whole time I was in the channel.
Totally. I think, again, people work to make it so darn hard. And in this training I was doing the other day, I said, here's a question to ask your client. What do you like best about your current supplier? And they were like, wait. You're building up the current supplier? Well, number one, it's going to show you the expectation that you're going to have to meet if you become the supplier. And it's going to take them totally off guard because they're expecting you to try to drill their current supplier, right? Just talk to them as a valued resource. Ask great questions like you were doing there.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I just wrote an article over the weekend and it was really aimed at, throughout selling from the heart, I position sales professionals versus sales reps, not to disrespect the profession, but just to get people to think, right? Because I believe there's two different mindsets when it comes to this. And I said, sales professionals are conversation facilitators. Sales reps are conversation interrupters.
Great way to put it.
And think about that for a moment. You can't be a conversational, you can't invite people in, or you can't be conversation facilitators when you're pushing your wares and you're asking, right, these questions that are just so basic in nature. And when I say so basic in nature, they're the ones that have been scripted out because that's in your sales playbook. And I'm not here to knock sales playbooks or anything like that. But how many people go into sales business type conversations, Scott, inviting people into the conversation and facilitating them as opposed to waiting to pounce and pitch on them?
Oh, you just see, it's like, oh, come on, they're gonna be quiet here. I'm gonna be able to talk here in just a second. I can tell that they're just about ready for me, and it is. It's you know, love having those conversations with no preconceived notions and no direct direction that you're trying to take it, other than to just create a relationship and open up a conversation and let the information become available as it is, right?
Yeah, whether you refer to them as buyers, right, executives, mid-level executives and all that, there's already a preconceived notion of salespeople already. I believe that we're entering into conversations with three strikes against us already. And those three strikes are lack of trust,
Yeah,
skepticism, right, and the BS meter.
yeah,
So we're walking into this already behind the eight ball, three strikes. So how do we overcome those? We have to completely flip the script and change the perception and change how people think of us. And that's why I believe there's not enough emphasis in sales today in working with salespeople on how you open the very first conversation with somebody. Because to me, that sets the stage. If I'm a salesperson and I open up that conversation in a very sales centric, all about me tone with you, Scott, you might, because you're a nice guy, you might listen to me a little bit and you're going to, you'll play on this, but you've already made up your mind in the first 5 to 10 minutes what's going to happen as soon as this the end of that conversation. Would you agree?
Oh, absolutely. I I say it ad nauseum. People do business with those they know, like, and trust. And so if you just take that tenant and say, well, if assume they don't know you. Well, if you assume they don't know you, then they don't like you because they can't, because they don't know you. And if they don't like you, they can't trust you because they don't know and like you, but they have to trust you to do business. It's a tenant, it's a gift, it's a non-negotiable, you know? And so somehow trust has to be built. And so I wholeheartedly agree with you that it's that initial conversation to get them to know and like. You're not going to get trust right out of the blocks, but you got to get the forward movement towards that process by that first conversation.
Yeah, and I love this know, like, and trust. And there's people that will probably beat down that comment forever and a day, right? Because there's always those people that will. But think about the world that we live in today. How do you become somebody they know, like, and trust when they haven't met you yet?
Right.
And that's where how you walk, how you talk, how you carry yourself, how you engage in conversations, your reputation and all that. My near and dear friend, Mark Hunter, which I know, Scott,
Mm.
he always says that your reputation precedes you. It follows you everywhere you go.
Absolutely.
And that's going to either help you start conversations, continue conversations, or get you to the next step.
I saw such a great example of that yesterday. A friend was in town over the weekend and he had made a post, and I said, well, if you're in town, we need to get together. And he couldn't find it in his schedule. And I finally said, I got an idea. Why don't I take you to the airport? I'm a whole lot more cost effective than Uber.
Yeah.
And he goes, no, I've got a better idea. Breakfast, Sunday morning, 9 a.m. And so I said, okay, see you there. And I showed up and I was one of 20. And it was amazing. What a great demonstration of living it, right? Living connections, living, putting people together. And it turned out to be an amazing 3-hour breakfast with everybody just chatting it up. And all sorts of business came out that will happen. And nobody went there for that, to my
Yeah.
knowledge, right? Isn't that the way it happened? So did any of your bosses along the way, when you were back in that channel, any of your bosses ever give you a hard time about your approach?
All the time. All the time.
No, wait a second. Say that again. So never?
They always gave me grief about it.
Right.
Always. Um, and there's one thing I was never going to sacrifice in the channel that I came out of. I was never going to sacrifice my integrity and how I carried myself.
Yep.
And if that meant, right, I had to lose a sale, then I'm going to lose a sale. And, as we're recording this, right, it's July 26th. There's a couple days till the end of the month, right? And we know what's happening in cross sales bullpens all over the place. What are you going to bring in the last couple of days of the month? And all of a sudden, all these conversations you had at the beginning of the month and how you position yourself take on different meaning when
Yep.
it gets to the end of the month, end of quarter. But what I always held myself to was this. I knew if I wanted to have an ever-flowing sales funnel, I had to build an ever-flowing relationship funnel.
Yep.
And there's certain standards that I held myself accountable to. I let my managers know what those standards were. I mean,
Great way to do it.
there was literally, Scott, I was in that channel of 28 in a some odd years. Out of those 28 years, I will tell you this, I missed my annual budget twice,
Yeah.
twice, and it wasn't by much.
Uh, when you're working with people through relationships, I mean, it's interesting you say that. I'd have to really think back through, but I don't believe I did because you always had those people to call on, right? I mean, if it really came down to it, and you said, "Hey, I'm a little short," and it wasn't your normal process, right? It was more of a favor because you had the relationship. More than likely or not, they'd throw you a bone because of the relationship, not because of your technique or anything like that.
No, yeah, I was never this. I was never, and I will tell you this. This is capital never, never, capital never. I was never the smartest salesperson out there. There was people that could outsmart me, out strategize me, outmaneuver me. No one was going to out care me when it came to how I worked with my clients, my future clients, and how I carried myself in the marketplace. And it propelled me, I believe, in different ways than that average salesperson. And here's what concerns me, because we've talked a lot, and Scott, and you and I know each other fairly well, is we're high relationship oriented guys.
Yes.
And I brought that into a channel that said relationships mattered, but yet they really couldn't clearly define what that relationship looked like. I was willing to take that relationship and dig well below the surface on a continual basis. And it's hard to build and this is what salespeople really need to understand. It's hard to build relationships with your clients if you irregularly interact with them.
Right.
It's hard to build relationships when you see them every 90 days, or you send them an email every 30 days, or you stop by, if you can, every 5 to 6 months. That doesn't constitute a relationship.
Right.
That's an acquaintance. And there's a lot of acquaintances going on in sales, not enough deep, meaningful relationships.
I totally agree with you. I'm back in my days on the street. I used to sit the first day and a half, and plan out um, my sales for the month. And I got to the point where I could figure out I was within 5% plus or minus of where I would end up because I had a relationship. And I then went and took that strategic plan into those relationships. And they appreciated the fact that I had their orders set for them based on all the right stuff. No tricks, you know, based on sell through and everything else. And so I get what you're saying about you've got to be consistent and regular, and depending upon who that relationship is with, you can stretch out that time frame sometime, but the chances are you're not going to do as much business with them consistently. You might come back to it at some time, but it's about consistency, just a touch, right?
Yeah, and that's where, I write about it in Selling from the Heart. I throw out a statement that unfortunately many in sales are consistently inconsistent.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's silly, but on the flip side, it's sad, because I believe the relational gaps that are occurring between clients and salespeople is huge. It's monumental. And what bridges those gaps is, you got to connect better, you got to care better, you got to engage in better conversations, and you got to bring compassion to the forefront. And a lot of times when people in sales, Scott, they'll go, compassion. Well, that's just, come on, I'm a salesperson. They buy things. Well, guess what? You're both are humans. You both have
Yeah,
feelings.
for sure.
And so here's what's interesting, because and this is where I believe that we have to bring deep care, and we have to make things really personal. And I'm talking personal with boundaries, not personal like crossing boundaries and things
Yeah.
like that. But how many times in sales have we been told this? And Scott, I'm going to use your name for this, but just because I'm looking at you, how many times have we experienced things like this, Scott? It's been great working with you, but I just wanted to let you know that we've decided as a committee that we're going to be taking our business elsewhere. Please don't take it personal. It was only a business decision. We've been told that time or time in sales. It may
Oh
not
yeah.
be exactly like that, but y'all get where I'm going with this. But I'm here to say, let's flip this around. Business is personal today.
Yeah, for sure.
And the more personal you can make business, the more comfortable that you can make somebody feel with you, the more comfortable they will start opening up about uncomfortable things going on in their office. Let's call those the undiscussables, if that's even a word.
It is now.
It is now. So, right.
No, but I love that. I think that's a it's actually a very brilliant piece, is that I know as a sales professional, I know things about my client that I'm pretty sure their spouses don't know. I mean, that because it does become personal. You become friends. You become a trusted resource. And again, because it's not surprising, because it comes down to trust to do business together, right? But it's amazing how strong relationships can be when you build that trust, especially over time.
Yeah, I don't remember who had said it. I want to say it's Gary Vaynerchuk, also is known by Gary V. I think I
Mhm.
was watching a video with him one time, and it may not be him, but right, it's him for now. It's him for the
Sure.
purpose of this conversation. And he said that we salespeople, and this was like sales centric messaging. He said, I want to let you all know that you live in a highly commoditized world. I don't care what y'all sell. Your competitor can come out with something bigger, faster, better like that.
Yeah.
So we all live, he goes, we all live in this highly commoditized world. You are the person who's going to make the difference. I go on to say it's those who get to somebody's heart the quickest wins.
Yeah.
And this is really uncomfortable things for a lot of salespeople. However, and Scott, you and I have had some one-off conversations about
Yeah.
this, is if relationships matter to those in sales, I don't care at what level you are in sales, then let's think about this on a personal level for a moment.
Right.
Whether you're, in a significant relationship, you've been married for a long time and things like that, you're going to get to the heart of what matters with your relationships. You're going to do something about it.
Right.
Why do we draw the line and we can't do that in our professional lives? Isn't that interesting? But people will go, I want deep, meaningful relationships with my significant other. But yet somehow they forget to bring some of that to their professional lives. That's what I'd like for people to think about.
Well, I think that it's a great point, because the reality is, the stronger the relationship, the greater the opportunity, the greater the trust, the um, gosh, you can be such an asset to them in so many different ways. You can help because you know so much more, and you know so much more because they've trusted you with that information.
Yeah.
It doesn't just show up somewhere. I mean, you've earned that piece of information in a way, right? And so, I totally agree with you that I think that there's things that, and I think especially in this day and age, or as opposed to me giving you my opinion, let me ask you yours. We've just come through, or are coming through, something that the world has never seen before in this pandemic, or lived through. How important is it now to change the way that we approach a customer by selling from the heart?
I mean, I think it was important prior. I think it's even more important post, right? So oftentimes we brought up the trust factor just a little bit ago in our conversation, Scott. And here's what I want people to think about as we push through the situation that we're pushing through. In a post trust, and in a post COVID era, those that bring the heart to the forefront and double down on it, I believe will future proof their careers.
I
But
totally
but
agree.
but how, but it's some people go, well, Larry, right? I get it, but I don't get it. And I may not smell exactly what you're cooking here, but we're humans, right? Humans crave a sense of belonging.
That's exactly where I was going to go. It's really about community
and
today,
and
right?
it and it's and it and it's about community. And I've been writing a lot about it. We speak about it in Selling from the Heart. We speak about it on the podcast. We spoke about it when you came on the podcast, Scott, and when you came into my insiders group. Is we got to learn how to, I believe the way that you bridge these relational gaps that are occurring between salespeople and their clients is you build communities. And some might even call it like micro communities. And what would it be like? I think it'd be sales nirvana if you built communities with your clients and you brought your clients together and you got to know your clients and you introduced them to other people, right, that you're doing business with. I think things need to be done differently post COVID than they did pre COVID. Is relationships. You got to double down on relationships. You got to double down on heart. You got to double down on connecting and relating to your clients in different ways. You got to ask them questions that you didn't know before, or that you didn't know the answers to before. You got to really start taking a look at, what can I do to build and maintain these relationships at different levels than before? Because one simple thing changes everywhere. This won't be the last time we go through something of some magnitude. Hopefully it's not like this, but we all know things change and things are cyclical, especially when it comes to big monumental events.
Yeah.
This is the time you got to re-engage, you got to re-educate, you got to reinvent yourself. You got to reinsert yourself into your clients' businesses. You got to know more about your clients' businesses than sometimes they do.
Well, that's exactly one of the reasons we've launched Be Connected and creating a worldwide global community of people who have a desire to lift each other up in their businesses, not necessarily just sell, your products, your goods, your services to each other, but actually to lift each other up, give guidance and do that, and also create that belonging. I mean, we talk about be connected, being seen, being heard, being found, so you can belong to this global community. So totally agree with you there. I think it is a big part of everything today is doubling down on relationships and learning more about your customer, your prospect, and doing what and holding them in a very high regard, quite frankly.
Yeah,
Right?
no, I totally agree. There's as I was listening to what you were saying, this is the words that popped into my head. Is just, Scott, just imagine what would it be like if salespeople had deep institutional client knowledge.
Yeah.
What would happen? I mean, they can't be replaced.
Right.
But how many salespeople have deep institutional knowledge of the people that they're working with? I would say a handful, and that's sad, because I believe we're leaving profit and revenue on the table right
Well,
now in
absolutely.
sales because we haven't built those deep, credible relationships. They've been surface level at best. And what do we really know about our clients' businesses? We're so narrow focused on, right? Here's my product, here's my widgets, here's my solutions, right? This is what I got to sell.
Right.
And you narrow focus in on that, and you've left 90% of other kinds of opportunities on the table.
It's amazing. Like I said, I thought I was going to breakfast with one person yesterday, was at breakfast with 20, and probably 4 or 5 opportunities came up simply from conversation, no expectation, no attachment, simply just be there. And what do you do? How do you do it? Who do you do it with? And how can I help?
Yeah.
Pretty simple process.
Well, I mean, it is pretty simple, but here's the question. Why is this so difficult?
I, you know, it's got to be a belief in other people that it doesn't work. So at least you got two guys here that have known for a career that it works, right?
Yeah, it's so funny. Early on in Selling from the Heart, there's a quote. It's probably my favorite quote in the book, Scott. it's this. I go, people have hypnotized themselves. Now I'm going to say salespeople. Salespeople have hypnotized themselves into believing what they aren't doing doesn't work.
Great statement.
And it right, it goes to the points that we're talking about, because there's a lot of people that are going to listen to this, that are watching this, they're going to go, all right, I don't buy any of this. Well, have you done it? No. Then there you go. You've hypnotized yourself into believing that what you're not doing doesn't work. Right. It's selling's not rocket science. We've complicated it over time.
Totally agree. Totally agree. Hard to believe that we're running up against time. So how about one last little piece of wisdom for everybody?
I would say this, that your inner circle, pay close attention. If you're in sales, pay close attention to your inner circle. Guard it. Find the right associations to hang out with. Find the right people to hang out with. Find those people that can help lift you up, and watch what happens to your sales career.
Absolutely. Absolutely. How does everybody get a hold of Selling from the Heart?
You can, well, some massive different ways, but I'll give you a couple quick ones. You can find out anything you want about the movement at sellingfromtheheart.net. If you want to find out about the book, you can go to sellingfromtheheart.net/book. If you want to find out anything about me, you can go there as well. But I'm on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. And then you can find out the movement on the Selling from the Heart podcast, which you've been a really cool guest on.
Well, thank you. Well, thank you for being here today. I mean, this has been tremendously valuable for so many. We got to do it again.
Anytime,
Perfect.
Scott. My pleasure.
Perfect.
Thanks.
Thank you all for joining us here on Scott Schilling Speaks. We'll see you again tomorrow, same time. God bless.